This video will focus on the histology of the spinal cord. When you're viewing this slide in person, you'll be able to see more of the spinal cord at any given time. The camera that we use to capture the image of the microscope slide only allows us to see about 60% of the center of our viewing field. So when you're looking at this slide in person in the laboratory, you'll be able to see nearly the entire spinal cord when you're on the 4X objective. If you'll bear with me, I have to move the slide around a little bit in order for you to see all of the structures of the spinal cord. This is a cross-section of the spinal cord, so we would be looking down on the spinal cord from above, like as if we were to cut it side to side, so a transverse or cross-section. The structure in the center that we see here is the central canal, and if we move top to bottom, we're going to move our spinal cord section towards the top, we see this bulbous structure here. This is called the dorsal median sulcus right here. The most important step in learning the parts of the spinal cord is to identify where is dorsal. On the models, you'll look for the dorsal root ganglion. But on the slide, you may or may not have the dorsal root ganglion on your slide, and we don't on this one. So you would look for the dorsal median sulcus, which is this hump-like structure right here. Let me move you to the ventral side of the spinal cord, and we see that the ventral side is much more heart-shaped, and we see that this is called the ventral median fissure. So this is a very deep groove instead of a sulcus, which is a shallow canyon. This is a very, very deep groove, and it's almost kind of heart-shaped. So this would be the ventral side. This would be the dorsal side, where we have this bulge for the dorsal median sulcus. This matters because the gray matter, which are called the horns, and the white matter, which are called the funiculus, are all named directionally. So if we were to look at the gray matter, we can't really see all of them at the same time, but this is on the dorsal side, so this would be the dorsal horn. Out here would be the lateral horn, and down here would be the ventral horn. Same thing on this side, dorsal, lateral, ventral horn. On the lab practical, you will not get points for writing gray matter. You need to call it by its proper name, and these are the dorsal, lateral, and ventral horns. I'm going to move the slide to the side just a little so that we can look at the funiculus. So this region right here is the dorsal median sulcus, which would make this the dorsal funiculus, the lateral funiculus, and if we move our slide, we have the ventral funiculus. So again, remember, the most important part is orienting yourself to find what is dorsal. And once you see where dorsal is, naming the gray and white matter becomes much more easy. I want to draw your attention to the meninges of the spinal cord, just briefly. The brain and spinal cord are surrounded by 3 layers of connective tissue called the meninges. The meninges act as a protective barrier for the central nervous system. There are 3 layers to the meninges. When you're looking at this slide in person, find an area where these layers are teased apart, pulled apart just a little. So here we can see that they've not been pulled apart, but here we see that they have. This allows us to see that middle layer a little bit more clearly. The most internal layer, which is this one right here, is called the pia mater, P-I-A, matter. It comes into intimate contact with the tissue of the brain or spinal cord. The outermost layer is called the dura mater. It is very durable and tough. When we do the brain dissection for the sheep brain in the laboratory, you will notice that the dura mater feels almost plastic in its consistency, and you will need to use scissors to cut that away. If we move to the 40x objective, to high power, we can see pia mater, dura mater, and then in between those two layers, we see this very delicate strand-like, almost looks like a spider web of material in between the pia mater and the dura mater, and that is the arachnoid matter. The arachnoid matter is named after its spider web-like appearance. So here we can see how strand-like and spider web-like it actually is. Notice how we have a couple of structures here. This circular structure is the cross-section of a blood vessel. Here we can actually see a longitudinal blood vessel, and we can see that there are red blood cells suspended in that blood vessel. The blood supply is anchored to the external surface of the brain in the arachnoid matter.